welcome back to the Tech and Junk channel. I'm your host, Ryan Chandler, here for a little bit something different for JunkTalk Live, the second episode, focusing on Elder Scrolls Online, the past, the present, and the future. I am joined this evening by none other than the salty one, Naffy, the Milky Viper, Milk Viper, and of course, Min-Maxer Extraordinaire, Gilliam the Rogue. Gentlemen, welcome to the chat. How are you guys doing tonight?
Good, thank you.
Hello.
I'm good.
Excellent. So, as always, guys, we're going to be a little bit less interactive in the chat. But for those that are joining us live, we appreciate you. And for those that are watching or listening on YouTube or podcast, cheers. And again, thanks for listening. So let's get into it, guys. The Elder Scrolls Online. We all play it. We all seem to love it. Tell me a little bit about when you started playing and how you came to the Elder Scrolls. We're going to start with Milk Viper. Go ahead and break it down for us. Where did you begin?
I began with the game from just hearing rumors that, hey, they're making an Elder Scrolls MMO and getting into researching, listening to people podcasting it. And then eventually they're like, hey, we're going to do betas. And I was like, this game is real. This is amazing. And signing up for those betas way back when. And then finally getting handpicked to be able to be in them and being super excited and going in it from there. And then being completely confused as to what I was actually doing.
Excellent. So you started then beta for the PC, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And now you are you play on PC and console or just console? Like where's your modus operandi?
95% I'm on the PS4, and when I get a chance to, I go on PC. It's very hard keeping up many characters across two platforms.
I'm familiar with that. I feel you on that one. Now let's go ahead and move it on over to Gilliam. Gilliam, go ahead and give us a background. What brought you to ESO? Like when you started? Like what were the circumstances when you started playing this game?
So I came from 10 years of World of Warcraft, and the game was reaching its peak of interest for me. I was kind of getting to the point where I wanted to move on, and I had loved the Elder Scrolls experience in the other games, and I heard that an MMO was coming. And being a big MMO player, I was like, oh, okay, I'll give it a try. I love the Elder Scrolls lore. Signed up for early betas, got into the very, not the alpha testing, but a lot of the earliest beta testing, did tons of stress testing, helped reshape the EP starting zone, like rebalancing a lot of the crafting system, and was actually a big person in getting a lot of the UI done in terms of character screens and stuff, because man, that was a mess in beta. Transitioning into the game, I took it really casually, just played on my own sort of thing as a solo player. Tried to make sense of the game, had no clue what the complexities of the things were, and then randomly got picked up in an endgame community in a trial one day in Craglorn, and that kind of just took me up off my feet, and then I've never really looked back. Just went in with a learning experience, tried to absorb as much knowledge as I could, as that's kind of how I approach life in general, and then just became a mogul almost of theory crafting and spending a lot of time with the game's mathematics.
That is true. I mean, I think if you're known for anything nowadays, at least for me, it is definitely for the min-max and understanding, what the potential truly is with any piece of that the content, how to approach it. Guru. Excellent. So then, moving on finally to Naffy. Naffy, give us a little breakdown of where you started and how you came to the Elder Scrolls Online.
Stopped playing Guild Wars 2, moved to Elder Scrolls because I too found out about it. Loved Oblivion and Skyrim, thought cool, this kind of environment online. I too took part in quite a lot of the alphas and the betas. Was randomly once just tanking a dungeon and some guy's like, yo, you want to do a trial? I was like, sure. Decided to do a trial. Next minute I know I'm in like one of the top trial guilds on the US server, and I loved it. So like, this is my bag. And then really I wanted to get it for PC. Not PC, I wanted to get it for PS4, but they had that whole issue with the launch. So I ended up sticking around on PC a lot longer than I intended. And then PS4 launched finally, and I was like buying it on console.
Very nice. So now currently, so I forgot to ask with Gilliam. Gilliam, you're a PC exclusive player?
Correct.
And Milk, you said 95% of the time on console, typically PS4. And finally, Naffy, where do you play most of the time now?
PS4.
PS4.
I don't even know my login details for PC.
Well, perfect. Well, as far as my background with this game, obviously, Elder Scrolls was kind of how I started even streaming, and that was a game my brother had put me onto. I was actually interested in the Elder Scrolls when I heard about it, Elder Scrolls Online, rather. I was a big, I got into Elder Scrolls on Morrowind, Elder Scrolls 3. That was my first Elder Scrolls. Moved in, got a 360 for Oblivion, played Skyrim religiously. And then heard about actually Elder Scrolls Online and didn't like what I saw. When I first saw it, I was like, wow, that doesn't look good. That was my first impression when I was reading about it, because back then you would read about games in magazines rather than just going online. It's that kind of thing. And yeah, they had obviously delayed the console launch, and I was like, oh, bad news. It's bad. It's bad. And then obviously it came out on PC, and they finally launched a console. And I had been the whole time when they announced they were initially doing the $15 a month model, like akin to World of Warcraft or other MMOs at the time. My feeling was bullshit. Like by the time it comes out to console, there's no way they're going to have an online fee on console plus doing the $15 whatever. So when it finally came out and they're like Tamriel Unlimited, I was like, yep. Okay, cool. And so it was on a list of like 3 games I was interested in that summer. And my brother had already got it, actually. He got it before me because he got it right at launch. And so, as a lot of people know in Tech and Junk, when I was on a break between a tour or a gig I was on, I just decided to start playing it, and I absolutely fell in love with it, in particular tanking. So PS4 was my starting point. I was one of the few people that actively streamed this game that didn't at least have some semblance of a start on PC. And only recently have I started an account on PC for more so being able to play with more people, obviously in the community, and kind of seeing what this whole 60 frames per second thing is. Because good God, PC, I love you, but definitely never leaving my PS4. So yeah, okay. So we got some different backgrounds here, and so I'm gonna open it up to everybody. What do you do now in ESO? What is the thing that guides you as far as when you play the game? Like, why do you play ESO now, today? Anybody can go.
Well, I play it now
Oh.
because it's super fun. I took a long break because the game was, when it first came out, it wasn't fun. And anybody who was in the beginning, it wasn't fun. In the first few months, it was really rough.
Well, tell me about it. Tell me a little bit more why it wasn't fun.
It was the blessing and curse with ESO is always going to be to choose your own play style. Whereas like do whatever you want. Can't guarantee it's going to work, but you can do it. And I didn't know what I was doing back then, so I was like, oh, I want to be a tank. I'm going to pick an Imperial Templar, and I was like, well, everything kills me and I can't kill it. This isn't fun. And they had like really rough grouping tools. For an MMO, like I was in certain guilds that were huge, but I'd be like, hey, anybody want to go do stuff? And crickets. And it was like, oh, this is rough. And dungeons terrified me for ages because people are like, dungeons are so hard. They're terrifying. Be careful when you go in there, you're gonna get kicked. And it was a rough experience for me. When I got my first character to veteran rank 1, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try a different one. But when I created a new character, it was a Magica Sork back then, and she was literally unkillable. She was the build back then was so broken with your Magica Sork, you were unkillable. It was hilarious. And then I was like, you know what? I've already beaten the story twice. I don't know what I want to do, so I'm just gonna let it relax. And when it came out to PS4, I did the whole when you could bring your characters to the next platform. I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna put it on PS4 because when you had it on the PC, they were like $20 per console, and I was like, that's super cheap. I'm gonna do that. And when I dipped into PS4 here and there, and then when I get the emails of one Tamriel, I'm like, well, let's check it out again. And then I started diving in. I'm like, this is a lot more fun. Things feel better. Like the game feels better. And then I just got hooked, and I've been just playing it ever since.
So one Tamriel was kind of the reintroduction for you. You played it. You were like, you would play it, you dip your toes in. But once one Tamriel hit, you were like, yep, this is my game. I'm in. let's go.
Yeah, it's a night and day difference. People who played it in the beginning, you can talk about that. I mean, we didn't have the champion point system back then. They were just barely talking about it. They were talking about, when they're like, oh, we're going to remove veteran ranks. And I was like, yeah, I never understood veteran ranks. Like, go to a new zone and level up with veteran. I'm like, why can't I just keep leveling the same character? Like, it was really off back then. But now it's so much fun. And like, I play it a lot. I mean, a lot.
Totally. I mean, I think for most of us, that's kind of still the thing. Now, same question for Gilliam and Nafi. Why do you play Elder Scrolls now? What brings you to the game? Why do you enjoy playing it?
To complain about it.
So Nafi plays it to complain about it. Excellent.
Nah, go ahead, Gil.
I mean, I've always been big after like I got into Trials the first time when like V10 and V12 were cap. I was really into raiding because I came from WoW and I was really into raiding there. It was rough at the start, like Viper had mentioned, but I'm a pretty stubborn person. I find something I like and I'm gonna make it work. So I was I have a lot of fun tinkering with stuff, making sense of how to make things better, finding what's best, and that's always been the driving cause of ESO. Whenever there's new content, I'm not necessarily excited about the content it holds, rather how I'm going to tackle that content or make new strategies or, as other people say, build a meta. And I really like being a part of making sense of the game and then sharing that with others so that they don't have to sit in a basement for 40 hours a week trying to make sense of a game, and they can just have fun with it, sort of thing. So that's usually what's the drive for me, is to just make content, make sense of the game, and constantly improve and reiterate for myself personally in terms of I love being as best as I possibly can. So
Gotcha. All right, very cool. I mean, Navi, you said you like to complain about things. I mean, other than that, though,
Nah,
why do you enjoy? Why do you when you enjoy the Elder Scrolls Online? Why do you enjoy it? Is the best way to ask you.
because it's a good MMO. Like, you can't take that away from it. It's a great MMO. It's fun. It's difficult in a sense, but it's not at the same time. It's the community that I play with as well. That's a massive part of it. Thanks to like Tech and Junk, obviously.
Woo, woo, woo. That I paid him to say that, ladies and gentlemen. He didn't actually. He doesn't actually feel that way.
Yeah, it's sold out.
I sold out. I sold out so quickly.
So
Okay, well that's
but yeah,
awesome.
that's why like, as much as it drives my head in, does my head in this game, I always come back to it.
Well that's something then. I mean, for me, I play the game. I think I actually connect a lot, obviously, with what all of you guys are saying. Gilliam, with what you were saying about making content, like it's not so much the new content itself, but it's how you're going to tackle the content, how you're going to break it down, how you're going to. For me, it's about creating fun, and it doesn't matter if it's ESO or anything else. It's about seeing the content as an opportunity to create more scenarios for more people to have fun. And whether that's breaking down the game mechanics, like figuring out new strategies to do things. In my case, if you are a bastion of establishing the meta, I'm the bastion of kind of putting it on its head and being like, well, yes, but here. And I enjoy, because I'm somewhat of a contrarian. And I just have always enjoyed, having a unique perspective and perhaps sharing that and allowing people to have more fun in more ways. So yeah, I mean, between that and obviously the community I get to play games with on and off stream, I mean, that's kind of the main reason I play ESO the way I do. And one of the reasons why a lot of people ask, you've done all the dungeons, For me, like ESO, it's like I've never. If Gilliam, you're saying you were into like the 12 like rating and 12-man stuff. For me, it's the exact opposite. I've been into the 4-man stuff. Just because for me it's like it makes so much sense. It's easy to get into. It's challenging. You can do it a billion different ways. And now for me, obviously for Battlegrounds, asterisks when it works, that still 4-man team dynamic is really, really cool to explore in a specific PvP-esque environment. So, yeah, I mean, that's in a nutshell why I like playing ESO and I continue to play it religiously. But I mean, is there anything now that we've come to this point? Obviously, we've all been playing for a while. Anything you guys miss? Anything that was in the game at one point at one update since it started that you're like, man, I really missed that. Go ahead. Anybody answer?
What do you
Can't
miss
think
from
of
when this?
anything.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I missed.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing. It's kind of almost like a trick question because for me, I don't actually have anything that I miss. I'm like laying out this show, and I'm going through, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna ask him, what they miss. I'm like, God, I don't miss anything. You miss add-ons. So, but is that okay? You miss add-ons being on console. Gilliam, for you, anything from the previous updates that you're like, man, I wish that would come back.
Not really. I mean, I miss some of the balancing of like when I could look back and be like, I could play my Stamina Nightblade so much more effectively than I can now, and it's kind of come back. But yeah, most of the stuff that I miss is just small balance things of like where things were more fun than they are now, and just the meta being a little bit more open up back then. It wasn't as pigeonholed and you're like, oh, you're not playing these 3 classes in this raid, then sort of thing.
I get that. I mean, yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that for sure. But okay, so if you guys don't miss anything, what's your the thing in the game you're most grateful for it no longer to exist in the game? If that makes sense.
What
is
kind
the
of
thing?
fucking questions are these?
Yeah, this is the question. If there's something, what was something in ESO? Because you guys have obviously played it even longer than I have. What was something that existed in the game that no longer exists in it, and you're like, fuck off, I'm so glad it's gone?
Veteran ranks.
Veteran
But
ranks.
yeah, I have to agree. Veteran ranks.
I just didn't understand why the XP dynamic changed from when you hit 50 to it's like, well, now you got to go be veteran 1 and go to a new zone and good luck. And it's just like,
especially back in the old days where like you hit vet 1 but you went into a brand new area and everything was vet 3 and kicked shit out of you.
yeah, that was
Well, that's the question.
That was
That's the
rough.
question too. So for me, I obviously came in a little bit later than you guys. Explain to me real quick, like how did the introduction of Vet 15 and Vet 16 come into the game? Because obviously this is going back before, for a lot of people that are watching and listening, before the
Well,
current
they just
system
kept
with champion
fucking
points.
adding levels, didn't they? Vet
Well,
10 was the max level.
Well, when did it
Like,
come
well,
in? So wait, where did it go to? Someone handle that because I really don't know. I don't even know.
Oh, I'm trying to remember.
It first went to V10. That was the original cap. And then it
Yeah.
went to V12 and then V14.
Which was Craglorn, right?
V12 was
Craglorn
Craglorn.
is-
And then Crypt of Hearts came out, and then it raised up to 14. And then 16 was that Orsinium?
Maybe Imperial City?
Or Imperial City? I don't remember. Because
I don't know.
CP was still around with veteran ranks.
yeah.
Right. Oh yeah, but when did CP come into the picture? That's my question. When did that
was
come in?
late Craglorn. So I believe
Ah.
V14 was cap at the time. So like they had started introducing veteran dungeons by then, which the last at the time was Crypt of Hearts, and a little bit down the line, a few months, there was like this really long period of no content, no real balance changes. The game felt like it was dying almost, and then they come in with like this massive overhaul. We're introducing CP, and people are like, what is that? And there's like, oh, it's a new way to progress your character after you hit cap. And for people like me, where I kind of like that grindy feel of like, give me more power, give me things to do in the game that actually feel like I'm doing something other than getting achievements or like one and done sort of encounters. So I was excited about that. Obviously, the way they introduced it was pretty flawed and all that sorts of stuff, but we've made leaps and bounds since it's come out.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, that's great. I mean, for a lot of people, everyone kind of goes, "It was here, it was there. Wait, no, it was this." So that's actually nice to hear exactly when that kind of came to be. I mean, and champion points have changed remarkably. Not even before this update, obviously, which changed remarkably how champion points are allocated and how front loaded they are. But do you guys remember kind of when champion points first came out and how how the balance was then? Like, how did that feel?
I don't even remember. I remember just one day logging in and like I had like 50 or 60 CP points. Just like I was like, what am I doing with these?
That's exactly. I remember seeing that, and I was like, I'm just not gonna touch this yet. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, there were no Deltia guides or out back then for those. It was just like, what am I
Uh,
doing with these?
Actually, and speaking of which, although Delta doesn't play ESO as much, Gilliam actually continues to put out guides that get published on Deltia's site. So if you see some of the recent stuff on Deltia's, I think it's deltiasgaming.com, you actually see a lot of the theory crafting that Gilliam is so recognized for. Don't mind me. He paid me to say that.
Hands you check.
Hands me a
Yeah,
check.
check of $0 because I'm poor.
Still check.
All right, so that kind of is kind of where we've been with the game. I mean, how do you guys feel about the game now? You know what I mean? What when you think of the Elder Scrolls Online, when you're like, you're getting ready to play the game, how does it make you feel? Like, are you excited about it? Do you have more negative things to think about than positive? Like, how do you feel about it? Tell me, just an open question. Go for it.
I'm
It's
excited about it.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, let me rudely interrupt you here. No, I get excited about it every day because I do. I wake up, get my stream going, get ready to play, see what I'm going to do this day. And every day is different. Every day is very different for me. Are we going to do, am I going to focus mainly on crafting today? Am I going to run around, try to farm gear that gets horrible traits and laugh about it like, prosperous, awesome.
Is he
Or am
gonna
I,
have Naffy in his stream?
or am I going to do a bunch of dungeons or like, hey, like a day ago, someone's like Halls of Fabrication, just a normal run. And I was like, I've never done it. Why not? Let's do it. And it was really fun. And I look forward to every day to playing because I want to get to that level where like, you're at tech where you're at, where Gilliam's at, I guess where Nafi's at, just to be able to be super confident in my characters and have like, this is my build. And because I get asked a ton of questions and I'm like, I just slapped this together right now and I'm just killing stuff with it and having a good time. And that's why I like playing every day because it's like, let me get better and I need to get more into tanking. It's been a little slacking. I'm trying to bring my warden in every day to tank, but I enjoy playing it. I enjoy the community and it's fun. It's like it's good to say that like I have fun.
Totally. I get where you're coming from on that. I mean, similar question to you guys. I mean, what Gilliam and Nafi, what makes you want to like? How do you feel about it right now? How do you feel about ESO?
I'm enjoying it. I think it needs a few balancing things again, but I think they're getting there.
Well, tell me about it. Like specifically, what do you want? What makes you go? There's something there. Like, tell me.
Well, for a start, my biggest thing is I want Battlegrounds to work.
Okay,
Without a
well,
doubt.
without a doubt. I mean, can we all agree that unfortunately, Battlegrounds is not working as intended? Without a doubt.
Oh, 100%.
So I don't know what it's like on PC. Probably still broken.
I mean, Gilliam, how's Battlegrounds on PC?
He's there.
They're still, I mean, they're better than they were when it first launched, like a month ago or whatever by now, but it's still not perfect. There needs to be a lot of work done.
Well, I'm curious. Like, when you go in, do you usually queue in solo or do you usually go in with group?
I usually queue alone. Queue times can be like almost instantaneous to like 30 minutes, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it that I've noticed. Like during prime time, even where it's just there are clearly people playing, and people really like Battlegrounds. So why is this taking so long?
Okay, interesting. Because that's the thing. I'm more likely to queue with at least one, if not two or three people. and I found them to be utterly not working. And in fact, it's the reverse of what you described for me on console. It's been day one, we could go in with a group of 1, 2, 3, or 4, insta queue, 2-minute, 3-minute queues in matches going. Granted, it was still that you'd have 4-4-2s, 3-3-2s, 2-2-2s. You know, it was like that, and that was broken. But you were in, you were playing. You know, it isn't ranked. It doesn't really matter. It's just about getting in and having fun at this point, like getting it to work. So, but at that point, I didn't mind. But at this point, like on the stream on Wednesday,
2 hours, wasn't it?
we tried a 4-man queue and failed for an hour. And it was, you know, a sad thing. I mean, we had a great time, you know, showing mounts and costumes that we like and our die styles. You know, we really kind of broke it down as we idled. But the reality is that we couldn't play one of the chief things of, you know, the Morrowind update, which is this new mode of play with Battlegrounds.
That's what I had meant with the really long times, where it would be like the queue is telling you someone has left the queue or like someone declined it, and it's like, I don't believe for a minute that for 2 hours straight there is constantly one person declining. That's bullshit. So that's what I meant by really long times, where it's just like the queue system is broken.
Well, and that's the thing too. You get randomly kicked from the queue too. We were waiting at one point for 30 minutes, and then all of a sudden we were no longer in the queue, and there's nothing you can do at that point.
It also shows sometimes like you're not in a queue, but you are. Even with dungeons, that's still a case.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my feeling on it right now. It's like since I kind of exist in that 4-man space, and I don't really I don't really pursue trials as much. I'll do them here and there. You know, it's like, oh, this group, you know, is interested in putting together. I can learn, particularly like the new ones as they come out. It's like, oh, great, an opportunity to learn and get it done. But it's not like I'm actively going, man, I really want to do trials. For me, it's like I want to do things in small groups because it's easier to get people in. It's less time organizing, more time playing. And Battlegrounds is so fun, especially for me, because again, I've kind of been the guy that doesn't do PvP. It's never been really kind of my interest because of it's more challenging, particularly as a streamer, if you're not a really talented PvPer, because stream sniping is a popular sport. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like I got a bounty on my head, kill the bounty. It's like kicking a kid in reality. I mean, I'm not a 1vxer. I'm an XV1er. I mean, I've said that many times. I'm like Zerg OP. I'm like, damn straight, I'm the Zerg king. Let's group up. It's supposed to be open warfare, not 1vx necessarily. So I've kind of stayed away from it, particularly on stream. And so Battlegrounds for me, being in that 4-man group setting, is like everything I want from PvP. It's everything I want. The idea of someone stream sniping, good luck. Good luck doing that in a Battlegrounds match. I'm sure someone could figure something out, but with somewhat of a delay, a non-issue. You move into the other aspects of it without the waiting that is in typical Cyrodiil PvP, which is to ride around looking for fun. Don't get me wrong, I understand the allure. It's like you're a warrior. It's completely, you can do whatever you want, but I don't want to look at my bear's ass as I start to hobble around trying to get to the fun. So the idea of just jumping in, I'm in the action, murder, teamwork, we win, we lose, whatever, we're back out again. And then not only that, but have it be no CP, meaning I can be on a PvE tune, assuming my morphs are somewhat tangible within that PvP space. I can just swap out different gear, jump in, have some fun, swap the gear, go back and go do a dungeon. I mean, that Battlegrounds to me is like, when we first asked, and we were asking everybody, what are you most excited about? The area of Vardenfell, the mode of Battlegrounds, or the class of the Warden? I was always going the Warden. To be honest, as it's come out, as it got closer to release, I was more excited about Battlegrounds than I was the Warden. I mean, how about you guys? Like, of that new content, what were you most excited about, and what are you still that's come new with Morrowind? What are you excited about?
I was excited for Battlegrounds, hence why we spent so much time farming certain sets in Impen.
Gotcha.
I was looking forward to Halls of Fabrication and making the Warden work at first. Now that I've done both of them and seen what lies in them, I'm more interested in Morrowind content and Battlegrounds. I was really disappointed in both of them, to be honest.
Gotcha. All right, we'll get in
You
that
don't like you
conversation.
don't. All right, we'll get to that.
We'll get to the warden in particular, but Milk Viper, go ahead. Like, what were you excited about before, and what are you excited about now with Morrowind?
Um, I was excited for a whole new area, and then I always get excited for a new class from other MMOs I played. I'm like, ooh, new class. Let me see how it plays.
Mm-hmm.
And BGs, I've tried it. It's fun. But sometimes I get completely raffle stomped, and I'm like, oh wow, I would spend most of my time respawning. That's fair. Whatever. I died, but I was really excited for just the new environment and how they were dressing it up, and then talking about the warden. And I still to this day I love the warden and I love the environment of Vardenfell. It's very cool. It's like, wow, this is really really cool. I hope they keep adding to it to explore more, because I feel like they kind of put a base on where they wanted to go, and because they have to be within the lore to an extent. And I hope they can kind of shimmy some things in there and make it like more explorable, and because that's, to me, that's Elder Scrolls. You explore, and I really like the landscape and just like faffing around and just throwing birds at people. It's great.
Throwing birds at people. I mean, I guess
Uh,
let's open it up. Let's open it up about the warden. I mean, how do you feel about the warden, Gilliam? You were saying you obviously have done a little bit of theory crafting, perhaps some testing, as you do. You're not a fan of the warden, is what I'm getting from you.
Yeah, it took the whole Templars jack of all trades, master of nothing, but did it even worse because like Templars are really good healers. They're like the best, and yeah, you can play other healers, but in terms of like what I find the most powerful, Templar healer like comes to mind for almost anyone in an end game perspective. So I was really looking forward to, okay, well, what's the Warden going to bring? Maybe it doesn't boast the most raw power, but maybe it'll have a bunch of really cool utility and support that will breathe life into what I love most about endgame content, which is working as a team. So instead of being selfish, look at how good I am, look at how good I buff my allies, because that's what a Warden kind of fits under in terms of aesthetics. It's about making your allies stronger, but it doesn't do much of that. Like a lot of what it brings isn't unique, and I feel like the class just kind of dropped the ball in terms of what I was really hoping for. And I'm like, it doesn't boast to be good at really anything from a PvE perspective. Like, yeah, you can do stuff with it, you can clear stuff just fine, but at the end of the day, there is no reason that's saying, hey, play a warden for this reason other than to have fun.
Well, I'm curious.
so
And when you say that, is it in relation to like 12 man? The trials, the endgame trials.
It's 12 and 4 man because I mean I
12
do a
and
lot of
4.
4 man too.
Gotcha. So for 4 man, so you found that the warden just doesn't seem to do well in the 4 man content you've been doing.
Yeah, because while they have really awesome and great skills, they're not efficient because at the end of the day efficiency is the most important aspect to a character or a class's power. How much do they do with as little input as possible? So like a Templar who purges his allies, heals them, gives a synergy
yeah,
which offers ultimate generation in form of passives, which gives healing back. It that does damage in one button press. Like just those sorts of utilities and options that classes have, and the warden not having any of that. Their skills are very one dimensional. I press button, this happens. Instead of I press button, tons of things happen.
Gotcha.
I
Okay,
can
well
see
that's an
where you're
interesting
coming from that
perspective.
because I've been I've been playing a warden as a healer, and I do like it. I enjoy it. It's kind of different, but the one thing I miss is purify, like massively. So
Yeah,
Gotcha. So, go
and
ahead.
like the Templar healer, like its greatest strength is the ability to heal without actively healing. So by having additional healers over time or things that function as such, they can focus on other things such as giving resource management, debuffing enemies, perhaps contributing to damage in a 4 man. The Warden, the second you stop spamming heals, you stop healing or your heals severely diminish, meaning that you rely on your allies' ability to keep themselves alive. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, But at the same time, from a healer perspective, in terms of efficiency, as soon as you stop doing your main job, you stop doing it. While a Templar can do his main job while also adding additional efficiency via debuffing or killing enemies quicker and so on.
Well, that's interesting because what you're saying is that you see the Warden being this utility class that sadly the utility doesn't make up for what it lacks, which seems to be, again, you described it as a Templar being the jack of all trades with the master of none. This is the uh, jack of all trades and really the master of nothing. So it's an interesting perspective, and I kind of actually want to go to Milk because obviously you've been enjoying yourself as the Warden. Go ahead and tell us what role you've been playing, and what has kind of drawn you to the Warden in that particular four-man space.
Well, I have three wardens. I have a stamina DPS, a magicka DPS, and a stamina ISK tank warden.
Got
Um, and playing the DPS classes, I'm like, okay, I understand this. I understand what you have to do the damage. And the thing about it for me is just long animations, the wait times on doing all of your damage abilities, and it's kind of like, well, I can see where this is not going to be the hardest hitting class in the game because it literally just isn't. It's like it's fun, it's great as DPS, but when I decided I want to make a tank, I've been having oodles of fun with it and just doing four-man content because I see small utility that works. I heal myself, hey, you over there, you got healed too. I give myself defense, hey, you over there, you got it too. And I've been really having a ton of fun with it. But I've been playing the Warden tank like I play my Dragon Knight tank, where
Mm-hmm.
I'm very very much in the opposite of what like a lot of the game says for tanks, because like I come from games where they have AOE aggro, where I can grab an
Ah.
entire move, pull them whole room, and they're like, oh, all of them's hitting me. I feel like with the Warden, I can do that to some extent. I can just grab everything. At first, I thought the little teleportation portal was going to be annoying. It's amazing. I shoot it at a far dude. I turn around. I ignore him. I start grabbing the other mobs. Dude pops at me. Grab all the mobs and just start doing what I have to do. If there's a boss and it's going to get somebody, I'll just start, defensing up and just popping some heals. Oh, it doesn't go on me. It goes on that dude who's about to get hit. Great. I feel like I'm doing a fun job. Um, and I haven't made a warden healer because I don't really heal, but I've had so much fun with the tank. It feels fun. And Gillian said, it may not be the most efficient tank, but I'm like jumping around, swinging my sword, having a grand old time doing content with it. And I've thoroughly, as far as all the wardens for me, the tank is the best version of the warden, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna. I don't think I disagree with you with that. I think even now that Gil and I are no longer an NDA, I mean, a lot of the feedback initially from me was that I didn't want to play it as a stamina DPS. I would try making something because I thought that'd be fun. There, I could create some fun ways to play with the Magic DPS. But really, what I wanted to do with it was tank. I couldn't tell you whether it was Magic tank or stamina tank, but I told you I was like, I can see utility with this class that I can't get with my Dragon Knight being the uber tank that it is. Because again, I don't think the Warden all of a sudden is the tank of ESO. I think the chains is everything. The AOE root. I know a couple of classes have it, but nobody has chains. And even the teleport thing on the Warden, is not nearly as consistent as chains, and chains obviously can be inconsistent too. But that said, there are scenarios in my mind, particularly when we do like dungeon requests or we do, ESO Follower Friday, and we're getting people that have no experience and or maybe squishier than usual, and you're using these AOE buffs and AOE heals, and you are typically, since it's a lot of their abilities are health stacking ish, like a lot of them are scaled. The heal is scaled of health. Some abilities are scaled of health. You find yourself stacking health more. You don't necessarily have to go like I'm going Green Pact and Plague Doctor, but throwing a bit of Plague Doctor, throwing something else on there. I mean, you could come up with some really fun ways to play, and manage to perhaps carry your team in a different way in that tanking role that you couldn't necessarily on a DK. Not to say that again, you're going to all of a sudden be able to do things in a Warden you can't do in a DK. There's probably things you can't. And I obviously have some experience tanking 4-man stuff. Everything on every class. I've tanked, Vet DC every class. I've tanked, hard mode Ruins, hard mode Shadows of the Hist on, Cradle of Shadows with every, class in the game. It's of all the classes in the game, having tanked that stuff, and since my focus is 4-man, I find the Warden to be just below the DK as far as utility, as far as like fun factor in that role and being able to get stuff done. And I guess it's interesting too, Gilliam, the way you describe efficiency being the kind of the arbiter as to whether it's working the way it should. I don't know. I think that's a really interesting perspective, and I think that also speaks to kind of how you approach the game. You have a very very powerful focus that I think a lot of people connect with, which is what is the best way. And efficiency is a great way to put it. It's the most efficient, the most successful, the most powerful way of doing something from point A to point B. I mean, go ahead, Nafi.
I was gonna say I really like playing mine as a healer, but I've spec'd mine towards PvP, and I can see what Gilliam's saying about not really like bringing much to the table. But I mean, if you have a group that's not running like a tank or anything, being able to give your backline like major resolve and major ward and stuff, I feel like in a PvP space, when I first saw it, every skill I looked at, I'm like, okay, this is so PvP oriented skill, the way I read it. I don't know if you'd agree with that. So
I totally would.
Okay, so yeah, we were talking about PvE, but now let's talk about the Warden in PvP.
I just feel like the Warden, in a PvE sense, I feel like it's lost. It's not to be played in PvE. I am going to play mine in PvE. It's leveled now. It's ready. But PvP is where I'm at with it. And I'm making a seriously annoying troll build, like, to keep my backline and my attackers alive.
I love it.
And when we can finally get into Battlegrounds, see what it can do in Battlegrounds.
I mean, Gilliam, tell me a little bit more about your thoughts then with the Warden in regards to PvP.
Don't nerf its healing skill.
In PvP, Wardens like totally flip what I said upside down in terms of like Wardens at times in the proper player's hands feel overbearing, where they fit so well into the most toxic elements of efficiency in PvP, which is mainly burst damage or inability to be bursted, that they really stand out as like this really pain in the ass class to deal with. You see a Warden and either, okay, maybe I'll get lucky and the guy on the other end doesn't know how to control it that well, or I'm going to get steamrolled unless I really, really outplay. Because, like, Stamina Warden in particular has so much burst, and while it lacks raw crowd control, it has great options to get crowd control that also enable more burst, mainly like Wrecking Blow, Flawless Dawnbreaker, that sort of stuff. So when you pair two undodgeable abilities that deal burst damage at a delay that are hard to read as an opponent, with healing, like the only universal stam heal in the game, like on the class, really, really efficient healing off of weaving in the form of Lotus Flower, which is still very important in PvP. Like, it has so many things in its favor in PvP that make it overbearing. And then from a tank perspective, it's a lot of the same. As you said, they can get away with stacking high HP and then grow off of it, while other classes have a disadvantage for it most of the time. It's like, oh, whatever. I have resource management built into my kit, albeit it's selfish. I can still take care of myself with my Netch. I can remove negative effects if I want to do that. I just have so much healing with low-cost ultimates and lots of mitigation that I'm not dying.
Well, this is a good question then. Do you find the warden then, if you were to have someone come into ESO, they're new, right? And they're asking, they're saying, hey, I want to be a solo player in PvE and PvP. Or rather than, let's split them. I want to be a soloist in PvP. Do you tell them be a warden over any of the other classes?
I mean, I would ask what their preferred playstyle is because you can't really get away with a lot of diversity with the warden. It's like you're gonna play these sorts of playstyles, or you're not gonna do very well with them. Like you can't really sneak around on a warden. You can't really do a super high damage bow build with a warden because like Scorch is melee, that sort of stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I would ask that, but I did say something very early on behind closed doors that Warden, in my opinion, is a pay to win class for the majority of the player base. Because a lot of what I talk about is inaccessible to the player base in terms of raw efficiency, being able to do all of these things at once. That's assuming you are very, very knowledgeable of the game. You understand weaving, you know combat priority, you know dungeons like the back of your hand. You can make informed choices at a split second. That's not really totally representative of the player base, as a lot of us can see. But the warden has a lot of great tools that sort of absolve those issues where it's like, hey, you aren't capable of doing super high paced rotations. Guess what? My rotation is slower paced. Yeah, it doesn't boast the best DPS compared to someone who's a min maxer, but you get a really strong floor, like what you start off as. So that's really, really strong. And then in PvP, like I have tons of burst damage that doesn't require a lot of forethought. It's like I press Scorch, I do a wrecking blow, someone's gonna die. Like they're very easy and accessible. So like as a new player coming in, the warden makes the most sense to play. As a solo
There's
player,
not a
as a
lot of them
small
right
group
now, though.
player.
Interesting. Very interesting. So you're saying that the warden, although its max potential is perhaps lower than some of the other classes in most scenarios, particularly in PvE, its min potential, like where it starts, its floor, as you described, is higher, and there's an ease of use there, and a lot of utility that benefits maybe players that, as you say, lack the general awareness for split second decisions and being able to know all the mechanics going in, so you're able to master content. I mean, that's a very very interesting perspective. I for a long time, when someone said, obviously the same question you ask, what style of play, but assuming they're kind of open to whatever, I've always said, Magicka Templar based on ease of use, utility, and in the end, you can kind of be anything you want to be. It's kind of hard. You play a Magicka Templar, you can be a tank, you can be a healer, you can be a DPS. Granted, yeah, min max. As far as min max potential, there's going to be different things all over the place, but that's interesting. I had never thought of the warden as a starting class. I mean, what Milk Viper and Sergeant Naffy? How do you guys feel about that?
As a starting class, like is you
Yeah.
run into the game, you get it. Whenever
Yeah.
I get asked that question, I never account for the warden because if there's a new player, I always say, in my opinion, that one of the easiest starting classes is a Magicka Sorc. Very, very simple rotation, very easy to get gear.
Mm-hmm.
Very has a kind of set build and understanding that it's to me it's ease of use. That's why when I have to do stuff where I'm like, I got to bring an easy class because I don't really want to try, I'll bring my Magicka Sorc. But I can understand what Gilliam is saying as far as at very low levels with the warden, you are very strong. And it was like, well, this is cool. I mean, be it some of the animations and things felt slow, but when they hit like a truck, and you're like, oh, they're dead already. Cool, I'm moving on.
That bird hit like a truck until I hit around level 35-ish.
Mm.
And then it was like, no.
Well then, let's have this scenario then. So Milk Viper, you said someone comes in as far as like a first class, assuming they're open to any play style. You went Magicka Sorc. Gilliam, am I fair to say you were saying like coming in with a warden first, assuming it's any play style?
Yeah, if getting Morrowind is an option for you, then Warden. But if not, then yeah, Magicka Sorc. I mean, I'm honestly brain dead in my opinion in terms of like their floor. Like you press shields, your pets do damage for you. They're very very little take, a lot of give. Like there's not a lot of requirements to play a Sork.
Interesting.
But you'd be
All right.
amazed how many people still sit behind the healer just spamming crystal frags.
Or hitting a hard cast or a heavy attack on a lightning staff. I mean,
Yeah, I
Navi,
mean,
what...
yeah.
Go ahead, Gilly.
That kind of falls more under the game lacking any system that has an aid in to help you understand it better. Like there's no way for a new player to go and figure out what does armor penetration do? How does the calculation work? What is weaving? What is animation canceling? Like the game is so technically loaded in terms of what you need to understand to be able to play a lot of things like veteran content. But there are no tools to teach them to you. It's all reliant on the community and your understanding as a player and engagement with, oh, that's how that works, and a lot of trial and error. But that takes time, and that's not something that a lot of people have access to.
Some people aren't interested in it either. Like me and Milt ran into a guy the other day, and he was complaining, and he was like, I was like, I can help you with your build. And he's like, shut the fuck up, not interested. I was like, okay, fine.
What I want to say really quick, can we give Gilliam an award right now for saying all that? Because I've been saying it for since I've been back in the game, that the game doesn't teach the player anything for the most part. It's like, here's your skills, here's a weapon, get out there and kill stuff. After that, it's literally like, I don't know, figure it out. And that's something that the game really needs for new players, because you see somebody out there with a sword and shield smacking a mud crab for 20 minutes, and you're like, this poor dude. And he's thinking, yeah, 87. Yeah, 102. You know, he's like, yeah, I'm hitting it. But it's like, man, maybe that's not the most optimal rate that you're doing it. And it's just the game just doesn't have that whole like, hey, here's kind of how it works. Like maybe better intro tutorials of like, this is how a class works. Like, I don't know how they would do it, but the game really doesn't have any lessons. Like, hey, there you go. We have to go out of our way. I mean, if you're not going to go like the NAFI, we've run into people that we try to explain stuff when we're in dungeons. A few of them come out and they just tell us to like F off. And it's like, oh, okay, cool, whatever. Then you don't care. Cool. You'll just sit there spamming crystal frags behind the healer and then heavy attacking for 20 minutes because you ran out of all your resources for spamming crystal frags. Cool. Go ahead.
But the new meta though is definitely light attack, ambush, 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 light attack, ambush.
I think
that's got to be the new one.
Yeah, I think Nappy and I have run into that like so many times where, you know, like William said, they don't teach weaving. Weaving is something that is not like it feels like the game doesn't tell you anything. Just like, oh, you have weapons, but spam your abilities, and when you run out, drink a pot. When that runs out, just keep light attacking, and then go back to spam your ability, rinse, repeat. And it's like, that's so ineffective, so inefficient use of a character utilization, in my opinion.
Well, that's the thing, though. I mean, I don't as you described the lack, what you perceive to be the lack of in-game tutorial for doing things as you say properly. That actually sends off red flags for me, because if they were to define how you play a class, it would, I believe, in many ways stifle, experimentation with playing the classes as a lot of us have, which is to, try. I mean, who was the first person to weave? Who was the first person to animation cancel consistently to be able to get out, look like they're doing a heavy attack and actually pull off like 4 attacks to murder someone in PvP. You know what I mean?
Now, you see, Ryan, I've seen that in other games. So from playing other MMOs, I've seen that before. That's not new. That's very popular in MMOs.
I'm not saying, forgive me, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist in some form in other games. What I'm saying is that by having the developer or the creator define, and this could be for anything, you're taking in some ways the mystery out of it, but you're also taking, it's like if we see the point that there's some form of tutorial necessary to allow players to play quote unquote properly, it's a very tricky balance to hit, because if it goes too far, I wouldn't play it anymore. It would be boring. You know what I mean? It's like this is how you play. If you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I totally agree with that. but
No,
it's all about implementation in terms of how it interacts. Like, I don't think what Viper suggested in terms of like, oh hey, you're playing a Templar, use these abilities as like a tutorial message would be a good way to get what we're driving at in terms of teaching the game. Like, it needs to be able to be radiant to the point where it's like, hey, we noticed you're wearing a sword and shield. Have you tried tinkering with this ability? Or here are some of the strengths of sword and board. Instead of saying, do this, it's good. Like, there are very easy ways to sort of guide players without telling them.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with exactly, like, not like saying, hey, stop doing that, change this, but just have more options. I mean, you want everyone to experiment and have fun, but that in this game in particular, since it's blessing and curses, do whatever you want, however you want.
Yeah.
Some players, it can push them away because they don't see progression in their ability to kill anything, survivability. They're like, I'm dying every 12 seconds, I'm not having fun, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm hitting this thing and I'm not, it is dying. These quests, these bosses are too hard. Like, in and some people are afraid to even use the in-game chat because sometimes it can be a little volatile. But at least this, like how Gilliam said, like, hey, we, like, when you get a certain level with something, it's like a little hint, nothing, just not to like push you, but just like, want to try this too? Hey, you can also try this. Just something a little more informed, like let's say in a tutorial where you hit an enemy with the skill, it'll be like this. Look at your resources go down. You can replenish with using a potion. Also, light and heavy attacks can do this, and you're like, oh, okay, so that helps me. Just simple little things that can be absorbed by many people.
Well,
Absolutely. I mean,
here's a great example too, right? You all know, like, when something's ready to be bashed or heavy attacked, gets to swirl around the head. We've learned that mechanic. Nothing in this game tells you that shit. There's no tutorial for knowing when to hit something that's off balance, or when to bash something when it's a bashable. Like, new players, I find, are not learning these roles. Like, when something's about to heavy attack you, you get the stars coming from the weapon and he glows the yellow a bit, and then you get a heavy attack. Like, we all know this, but new players, they run into that shit. They don't see it because nothing tells them about this.
well, I'm
It's not
curious.
that they don't tell you, because there are in-game pop-ups that saying blocking a heavy attack will set an enemy off balance or interrupt an enemy casting an ability, but it doesn't give you meaningful information, which is the issue.
And
Their
it pops
terms
up
are
so quick.
Yeah, their terms are very ambiguous. They are not like referring to specific actions. They don't explain like, "Oh, hey, what does off balance actually do? Why do I care about it?" Like, there's none of that. It's just telling you to do something in a pop-up like dodge roll that attack. Why though? Why?
Well, and here's the thing, though, guys. Something to think about, because again, the structure of ESO is somewhat more unique than other MMOs that are out there right now. Obviously, there's Black Desert Online, there's Terra, there's a few others that try and do somewhat of a more, let's say, active playstyle. But imagine for a moment you're not an MMO player, but you're an Elder Scrolls fan, and you buy the Elder Scrolls Online. To me, if I didn't understand what this game was and I came into the game, I wouldn't be surprised to be spamming one ability because it looks cool, and it honestly, ESO and the way that it functions is a lot like a third-person action game at its core. It's a highly customizable. You can play this thing as an action game, and we talked about it a little bit on stream earlier this week, but I can almost see why beginner players, without what you're describing, without little cues saying, hey, this would be, or hey, what, this, try this. It's just very intuitive to be like, I'm hitting him, I'm hitting him, I'm hitting him, I'm hitting him. You know what I mean? I'm winning, I'm winning, I'm winning, and that's just how it plays. Because again, it works.
The thing with that is, though, like, so you're playing this game, right? You're brand new to ESO. You're playing this game. Let's say you've picked a Nightblade, right? First skill you could unlock is what? Siphon Spirit, Ambush, and it's Assassin's Blade in it, and then Cloak, right? So we've got high enough now. We've got Ambush. We now have got that skill in our bar, right? The game even goes as far as putting that skill in your bar for you, so you don't have to because you've leveled up, right? At what point do these players then get to the point where they're like, all right, I've now got 2 skills in my bar. Let's see what another one of them does. Well, that looks cool. Like, and you keep leveling, eventually that skill bar fills up, but you keep unlocking new skills. I feel like right now, people are unlocking these new skills, but they're just getting whatever the 4 skills are in the bar while they keep leveling. And they're never changing or looking at anything. And I feel like people don't really want to experiment. Like, whether it's a multiplayer game or a single player game, like playing Skyrim for hours, I didn't just pick up Skyrim and go, right, I'm going to use a sword and a shield all the way through the fucking game. I picked up a 2-hander and was like, oh, what's this? Or a bow. Do you see where I'm coming from? Am I explaining it well enough?
I kind of see where you're coming from. I mean, it's like if you're playing it as if you were playing Skyrim, for example, you're not instantly, you don't instantly know what you're going to do because you have to obviously discover it and kind of understand for yourself, like, okay, I'm making a decision to do X or Y. I guess my thing is that this feels like, you compare this to perhaps like the Old Republic, like Star Wars: The Old Republic, as far as an MMO. As far as structure, on-screen, pop-ups, the user interface, everything that you do in that game, even as far as the reaction between, click to action versus real time, it doesn't read MMO, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like it, because it doesn't read WoW to me. Because for me, like Gillian was talking earlier about being, a long-time WoW player, I played WoW briefly and hated it. I was like, I don't connect with this. I don't like this. This is not a video game to me. This is not something I connect with at all. Like, I instantly knew, I'm not in the world, not in the game style, not into the content. It was just nothing. I'm not into the monthly fee. One of the reasons I liked ESO is I was like, oh, Tamriel Unlimited. It's finally an MMO on a console, and I don't have to pay a fee. I like the structure. Let me know more. Of course, now I play for ESO Plus forever. I'm constantly re-upping it to get crowns, but they got me. I've been got. But yeah, it's tough to try and put myself in the position of like a new player coming to this game and trying to go, why would I hit ambush 100 times in a row? And it's because I'm going, what did I play before? Devil May Cry, God of War, third-person action games. Except this one, I can control how my character looks. I can control how he moves. I can control everything. It's like Elder Scrolls, and there's cool things. And look at me as I dash forward. I can cross the distance, do damage. I can just hit this one button. Because some people, when they play action games, they hit one button.
Yeah, and no, I totally agree with that whole idea, but the issue then becomes from ESO being an MMO, and there not being an ability to step back and say, hey, this is too hard for me. I want to keep pressing my one button. Let me turn down the difficulty. So you can't really use that as an argument in terms of a balance standpoint, because, like, Overland content is literally balanced around the same thing you're saying. The people that do spam ambush or one ability over and over again are getting that instant gratification because the game teaches them as they level, hey, you killed the bad guy. You did it. You beat the quest. Now progress. There's no system that says, okay, well, now you're going to have to switch things up. You're going to have to learn what a damage over time effect is. You're going to have to utilize synergistic abilities that work well in tandem. Like, there's nothing that kind of makes you learn the game a little bit, like, one step ahead of what you're performing at. It's just, you either do it or you don't. And, like, the whole third-person AARPG thing makes total sense. I agree 100%. But the issue is as soon as you get to endgame, that diminishes, where it's like, okay, well, I'm doing Overland content. I can one-shot any enemy that I want with any ability. Doesn't matter how bad my gear is, how bad of a player I am. But as soon as I go hit a world boss, I die.
Oh, without a doubt. No, you're not wrong in the slightest in that respect. And that's what I mean. It's like ESO is odd in that it can straddle a couple different genres pretty well, but in the end, it is an MMO. And you're right, once you go from I'm wearing training gear that's level 10 and level 50, and I've been spamming ambush for 30 hours, and now I wanted to do a dungeon, and you're like, why am I dying? This game sucks. And it's like, well, obviously, the transition, there was something that was lost in translation. There was no, as you described, justification for changing their style of play.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had to explain dot the other day, Gilly, to some guy in our group. I had to explain what a dot was and also let him know that spamming elemental blockade to proc his crystal frag was not the best skill to be using.
I
That's
mean,
tough.
it's totally normal. Like, I've been asked numerous times, do dots stack? Can I use poison injection and rend at the same time? And it's like, the fact that, I mean, it's kind of sad in one point that you can't go test that yourself, but since there's no UI system, that's kind of difficult, so I can understand. But the fact that the game doesn't even, like, show a disparity between skills and explain what they do, like, oh, hey, this is a damage over time skill. It can be applied to a target and then doesn't need to be reapplied until the duration ends, so you can do other things in the meantime. Like, there's no, it just says this ability does this over duration. But then, like, as a new player, you are at the whim of what the game's mechanics are. There is no way for you to understand other than in ESO, trial and error, or not doing it. And many people would rather avoid and not do it so they don't leave their comfort zone. So
Yep.
there needs to be a system in place that's teaches. Like, that's one of the most important things about gaming in general, is you need to teach your player base how to play the game.
I
Yeah.
talking about people that came to it. ESO was my first MMO, so I was a huge Elder Scrolls fan, and I wanted to play it. And I was the guy that was the Dark Elf Nightblade in the betas, and I was like, "Let's conquer the world," and I was getting slaughtered, and I didn't understand why. I was getting utterly trashed, and I was like, maybe this game isn't for me, And after that, I made a Dragon Knight in the betas. Like, I made different stuff, but it was just, yeah, I spammed my button, I ran out of stuff, I can't run away, I'm dead. It wasn't until I played Final Fantasy XIV, which is a traditional Trinity system MMO, where I really got the appreciation of understanding MMOs, and then I brought that knowledge into when I came back to ESO, and I was like, now I understand things 1,000 times better. But I was that player that Nafi would hate in a dungeon, that I get annoyed with in dungeon at times, when you're just like, you're spamming that one move 15 times. Now you're out of resources, light attack, light attack, light attack. You back away, walk forward, light attack, and it's just like that. Like Gilliam says, like, we're none of us are really trying to say, like, play this way or get out. It's just that there's just a lack of information, and it's just way too vague.
Well, moving from there, I mean, what do you guys think as far as the classes as they stand? I'm going to give you can make one nerf and one buff. One nerf and one buff on one class. You have to pick one nerf, one buff on all the classes. What is your nerf? What is your buff? Go.
Okay, I'll go first. Sword
Okay.
shields, give me more than fucking 10 seconds. From 30 seconds down to 6 was a joke. Fucking joke.
Okay, so you want a buff on the sword shields. Now, where's your nerf?
Just nerf Nightblades completely. Fuck them.
Oh, what part? What part about the Nightblades? What, were you just taking away the
Everything.
cloak? You're taking away the cloak? No more cloak?
Just nerf the class.
Uninstall.
Nah. Nah. Actually, I wouldn't even think of a nerf. I don't know. Let me come back to that, because I was
Okay.
joking with Nightblade. I understand. So
All right.
I'll come
All
back.
right. So that's your buff is the sword shield. All right.
Yeah.
Someone
I
jump in.
I think that was really unfair.
I remember when you came back. I remember Navi was a sword player, Magic a sword player forever. When I first started playing ESO, he was one of the first players I really played with regularly. And as I said, he has a love-hate relationship with this game. And he quit. One of the first times he quit during a time when they nerfed the shields. So he came back, and my brother actually did the same thing. He came back, and the shields went from 30 seconds to 6. And both of them were just going, what the fuck is this? What is this? I used to sit in my shields for 20 years and never die. Now I have to actually sit in the back and be squishy? What is this? It's crazy. It's absolutely hilarious. I mean, but guys, like, a nerf and a buff. Nerf and a buff. What is the one nerf? What is the one buff?
In my opinion, I think they've been nerfed enough. All classes keep getting adjusted, brought in line with other classes. They keep getting the nerfs. I think that they, instead of nerfing classes, just bring the rest of them up to one that's stronger and just make them all strong, and then adjust the game around that.
Gotcha. Okay. And Gilly, how about for you? Nerf and a buff.
I agree with not nerfing classes in particular, but I do believe there are specific mechanics and how they interact need to be nerfed. Namely, damage shields. I would be 100% fine if damage shields went up in duration, but the ability to stack them. The fact that damage shields are so potent as a form of mitigation, and they cannot be crit, which is like one of the most important stats in any combat game that has it. The fact they can't be crit and can be stacked and have also other advantages, like, oh, you give me resources back. Oh, they do this, they give a buff. Like, the fact that there's no disincentive to doing that is their issue. There needs to be a disincentive, either diminishing returns if you put multiples on, you can't put multiples on, they take bonus damage if, like, some sort of mechanic that punishes the ability to just recast. Oh, hey, the guy dumped his ultimate on my shield. I just pressed the fucking shield again, but he doesn't have another ultimate. Like,
and as a shield user, I can completely agree with what Gilliam just said. Like, if I use Harden Ward and then I stack Harness Magicka, I should either get one or the other, not be able to have both. So I can agree with that. As a shield user, I did say that's fair.
yeah, and even from a PvE standpoint, like, why Magicka has been the dominant playstyle since the birth of ESO is because you get shit on as a DPS player all the time. So you need to stay alive. What's the easiest way to do that? Spam damage shields. Stamina has nothing like that. They have pure mitigation, but I can't just spam Blade Cloak. It does the same thing every time I press it. Meanwhile, a damage user can get his resources back, place his dots so continuously deal damage, and completely shrug off any punishment. Like, damage shields in their state, in both PvE and PvP, have very negative effects on ability to balance the game.
Got it. So the nerf is not necessarily on one class or nerfing classes. You're against that. However, Magicka shields.
Just shields in general. I mean, if Stamina had a shield too, then it would be the same story. It's like the shield is the issue. It's just the fact that Magicka has a bunch of them that they can stack.
I mean, because let's think about the stamina shields right now. Is it just bone shield? I mean, I'm trying to think of other stamina shields that exist.
Barrier scales with stamina weapon damage or Magicka spell damage, but
it's an ultimate, obviously.
It's an ultimate. And it's going to be weaker than a Magicka version because coefficients are more in favor of resource, which stamina builds have lower resource thresholds than Magicka builds. And then Bone Shield and Synergies, which, like, those are max health. Those aren't stamina shields.
Interesting. So, for me, I'm not big on either one, to be honest. I'm more of a passenger versus being someone that advocates for one or the other. But it does bring me to another topic about Battlegrounds, PvP, and proc sets. Now, this has been obviously something that a lot of the community's discussed. It's gone many different ways. A lot of opinions have been shared. You know, they need a nerf. They don't need a nerf. They need to be nerfed in PvP only. They need to crit. They don't need to crit. They've been, you know, it's a lot of, there's a lot of noise when it comes to this. And so for you guys, I'm interested in hearing about it. And I'll go first. I don't believe proc sets need to be nerfed. I understand the strength of them in no CP. I understand, you know, the kind of the rhyme and reason why they've become so popular so quickly, in particular with Battlegrounds, since that's kind of what's brought a lot of people back to no CP PvP. And Yeah, I don't think that's a positive thing. In particular, if they nerf proc sets and it affects both PvE and PvP, I think that's a mistake. Personally, what do you guys think?
I'm fine with proc sets. If it kills me, it kills me in PvP. I I I don't think there can be an adjustment that won't greatly or adversely affect both sides greatly. Um, I've even heard people say remove them from the game, take out all proc sets, and it's just like, don't remove content. Don't make things a little more separate. Make certain rules within the game if you're going to do battlegrounds or a certain type of combat. Hey man, these aren't allowed. You cannot enter. You must change your gear. Well, I want to play how I want. This is kind of the only way to balance, but I don't know. I don't think they need to be adjusted, because the only ways they can adjust them now are remove damage, remove the damage significantly, like it doesn't do this amount of damage, change what type of damage it does, and change its chance to actually activate. And most of them have 10%. Like, hey, it activates on 10% with this and this. Whether you're going to bring it down to 1%, hey, you have a chance in a blue moon for it to do 10 damage for 2 seconds. Good luck. I don't want to keep seeing these getting reduced. I mean, we already took the hit with the no crit. And I'm speaking from a PvE standpoint. I know PvP players are like, well, man, I got killed by this Nightblade who was wearing Celine's and had Viper and blah, blah. And it's just like, okay, that's a ton of damage coming at you. In all honesty, you shouldn't survive. You shouldn't survive. If that's play styles. Like, do counter play styles. Like, oh well, I want to 1vx the world and 3 Nightblades or 3 people snuck up on me and they killed me and it was their proc sets. Okay, it happens. You're in open world combat. Congratulations. I just don't want to keep seeing these reductions, because on my end of it in the PvE, it makes things harder, but it kind of like it spawns a fire to like, well, let's try to figure out how to make our characters just as strong, just as efficient, if we're not going to have to use this. Some of my characters I don't use monster sets anymore, because I'm
Hmm.
kind of getting ready for that. Oh, these are completely useless sets now. Sorry.
Gotcha. Okay, Navi and Gilliam, what do you feel? Proc sets? Do they need a
I'm still
nerf?
thinking
Do
it
they
should have
need?
been nerfed.
Oh yeah, he's still trying his hardest. While Nafi thinks hard and tries to blink, Gilliam, go ahead.
All right, so there was one part you missed about what could be done with Proxet's Viper, and it's not a necessarily a nerf to them. It's changing how they interact with one another. So I had a pretty well-written forum post about it in another person's thread. I think Jules made another nerf Proxet's thread, and I wrote a pretty long-winded explanation of how to reach a healthier balance with them, and it's to make them scale off of your stats so that
Mm-hmm.
a
Mm-hmm.
they get stronger in PvE. So we have build diversity. It's like, all right, player A who's really good at min maxing wants raw stats, can do a lot of the complex stuff, but player B has rheumatoid arthritis and can't do all the crazy weaving. Let's give him an option to be maybe not as strong, but just a little bit weaker, or maybe in some cases stronger, depending on combat situations, with a proc set. So something that's a little bit more, you do this, it happens, instead of you have to do all of these things. So I like proc sets to help players who aren't as good. So in making them scale with stats, that means, oh hey, I have Hunding's Rage or Twiceborn Star. That's going to buff my monster set, so I'm still getting efficiency out of them. I have a reason to wear them. However, in PvP, it gets to the point where, okay, well, maybe I still want to keep Viper. Okay, cool. I still have enough offensive stats to make Viper's proc strong enough to deal considerable damage and to make effort or change the variables in combat. But let's say I also want Tumor Scale. I also want Red Mountain. Okay, well, now I've just given up one 5-piece and a 2-piece of offensive power to gain those 2 proc sets. So my rotation is easier. I don't have to press as many buttons to get free damage, but they're now weaker because I'm giving up that offensive capability that makes them stronger. So it disincentivizes the really, really toxic builds, which are like 3 proc sets that all go off at once with no counterplay because they don't have telegraphs that can be blocked or whatever. Um, while still giving that an option, like, oh, hey, you want to be the proctato that does that? Go ahead at your heart's
Proctato.
content, but you're going to be less efficient. You're not going to one-shot players anymore with very poor telegraphing, so that there is a give and take. There's a check and balance system in terms of, oh, you don't want to wear proc sets. Now you are just really, really good at dealing lots of damage if you can use abilities properly. Or maybe you want to have 1 or 2 proc sets. They're going to be weaker, but still be efficient. Or maybe you want 3 proc sets, which is the easiest thing you can do, but they're all weaker. So that there is an actual give and take sort of balance in combat where it's not just, hey, I don't have to stack damage. I can stack 100% regen or healing, keep myself alive, and still one-shot players because my gear sets don't have coefficients to them. They just do damage for free.
I understand where you're coming from on that. I think that's actually a very interesting solution that doesn't take out proc sets by nerfing them, because again, if you nerf them now, where would you use it in PvE? I mean, it's like you said, that would no longer be a easy option for, you know, a less intensive weave or harder playstyle to get content done. And at the end of the day in PvE, regardless if you're going for high scores or not, it's about getting the content done. Can you do with X to go from point A to point B? But touching on what you were saying as far as you know, a lot of the fervor behind it, do you genuinely feel that it's coming from a place of, like you said, you know, general balance and understanding, or is it more so from a place, I win, I lost, and now, you know, there's something wrong with the game? Because for me, one of the key things I've found interesting about this is that counterplay is a big thing in any game. You know, being able to have give and take. You know, you do this, okay, I'm going to counter you with this. Okay, I'm going to counter you with this. Going back and forth. And a lot of the argument behind proc sets is that there is no counterplay. You know, there's
It's not
nothing.
that there's no counterplay; it's that there is very little counterplay.
Right. But in the narrative that gets kind of parroted over and over again, there's no counterplay. I agree with you. I truly think there is counterplay, and I think in particular, oddly enough, because the queue system has been broken, and because people have been getting in significantly less matches than they typically would at this point in a release, assuming it worked like it did day one on console, 3-minute queues, 2-minute queues, 5-minute queues, and you're in matches, regardless if they're perfectly 4-4-4s. You're in matches fighting against, you know, people with groups with single player queues, and you're good to go. Like you're getting the matches in. You're getting the experience in this new mode necessary to see, oh, proc sets are really popular. Okay, now I have an opportunity to come up with a scenario and try it out and actually play it where I can figure out the counterplay. I can block. I can be running Radiant Mage Light. I can be playing with a group in tandem. I can be in communication to circumvent this, because what I believe has happened is there has not been enough opportunity for counterplay to come into the game as far as these proc sets are. Because what's happening is it's kind of a vicious cycle where people can't get into group queues. Like I said, four player queue, an hour, and we don't get in. So that's off the table. So you're left to either queue by yourself or with one other person. Most of the time, people queue as a DPS into this kind of mode. You're not queuing typically you're not queuing in as a pure tank. You'll queue in as a healer if you're familiar with healing, but the majority of people that play this game are DPS. So you queue as a DPS, you go in as a single player, and as you know, Gilliam, obviously you're familiar with, the coordinated teams win the games. It's not the solo players off in the corner. It's the coordinated team. So when you're in a solo queue and you're in with a group, and one person goes off to the left, 2 people go to the right, and you're left by yourself, there is no healer. It's like, what the fuck do you do at that point? And what the fuck you do is try and find something and kill something. And procs are the path of least resistance at this point, because of the lack of coordination and the lack of access to matches. And because of that, if you're going to then come away from that first match in Battlegrounds and go, wow, I got killed by X, Y, and Z, I didn't know whatever, I got to do that. you go back in, there's no like, oh, I failed. Oh, okay, let me try this out. Like, hey guys, what worked for you? You know, our healer was doing this. Did anyone run Radiant Mage Light? Is everyone running Impen? Is anybody running heavy? Like, what, you know, what can we do as a team to circumvent this? There's none of that. It doesn't exist. It's just, oh, this is what you do now. And because, again, we can't get in to get more matches, people can't get in within groups, you have to solo queue. It's the path of least resistance. What works as a solo player? When people ask me, you know, Battlegrounds, you know, what do I do? Stamina tune, stamina DPS, or a healer. I don't say go in solo as a magic tune for DPS, period. I don't suggest that. Because again, if there's no coordination and you've got 4 people on the other team that aren't coordinated, but they're all Nightblades and they're all using proc sets, you're going to get wrecked. It doesn't matter how good you are on a Sork and your shield stacking and everything. You got 4 of them on you and you got Mass Hysteria and a few other things, you're done. And that's kind of been my crux, is that through all this passion, let's say, for proc sets and how toxic they are, you know, and how bad they are for the game, what's being lost is that it's kind of informed also by the environment of where the game is at currently, and that includes the broken BG system right now. So the idea, you go ahead.
I would disagree, because that's going off the idea that there's only been BGs. Like, proc sets have been popular in Overland PvP and dueling for the past 3 major updates.
Absolutely.
So, once upon a time, they were even stronger because they could crit. And we've seen their, so to speak, counters diminish even after removing their ability to crit. Because before it was like, hey, you stack Impen, okay, well, A, you're really tanky against a lot of aggressive players, and you're really tanky against proc sets. Now that proc sets can't crit, Impen's efficiency went down because you're not being bursted as quickly by crit damage, you're just being bursted by raw damage. And there aren't a lot of efficient ways in terms of a DPS player to get mitigation in the game at the moment. Like, it's like, why would I ever get anything other than my major buffs and maybe Sword and Board as a DPS? Because if I do that, then I'm just losing tons and tons of damage, my ability to kill my opponent before they kill me. So I agree with, like, what you're saying at core, like, people need more experience, but at the same time, proc sets have been around so long that it should be evident that the reason they're broken is because the way they operate. They're free damage. They don't require anything other than hitting your opponent. Like,
well, then that's the thing, though.
Specialities within them.
But that's the thing, then. If it's existed in the same form for the last 3 major updates, why is it a problem now? And
it always was a problem. That's why they got nerfed.
I understand, but now it's not. We weren't having this conversation. This wasn't particularly in non-CP PvP, right? Because in CP PvP, once the crit went away, CP PvP is completely different than non-CP PvP. The reason I think you see the forum posts you described, and you see, the vitriol and social media and everything about proc sets, is simply because of Battlegrounds, because of people being put back into no CP when most people didn't play no CP, and again getting into matches and losing consistently to something that they find systemic and to be a pattern of something wrong with the game, when in reality it's kind of like when we were talking about Nightblades. It wasn't all of a sudden that they became the end-all be-all. The general survivability, as you described, went down, and Nightblades have always been about burst, and so that little threshold, as it came down, made them more effective within the space, not in merit of something specific to them, but just because of survivability in general. It's kind of the same thing with the CP versus no CP into Battlegrounds. It's like this is an issue, and it's becoming a thing, and I think, and again, the joke is I'm the nerf whisperer. I think they're going to nerf them. I truly do. Whether they do something, which would be great, kind of, if they're going to change anything, doing what you're saying as far as scaling it to stats, which kind of makes sense anyway, because it's kind of an anathema to everything else if everything scales off your max magicka, your crit, your spell damage, whatever, and then all of a sudden this thing just does a flat rate of damage no matter what. You could be naked and it's going to do a flat rate of damage. You know what I mean? It's like, that doesn't make sense. So I honestly actually think that's a fantastic way of approaching it. But let's say they don't do that. let's say that's not on the table and they just do a nerf, similar to when they took away the crits. You know what I mean? That the only reason that's like I honestly think something's going to change with it. I am as the nerf whisperer, as the guy that's usually like this is going to happen. I truly feel like that's going to happen.
I agree with both of you. I agree with what Gillian was saying about what needs to do with the sets. I also can agree with where Ryan's coming from. I think Zoss will just give up in the end and they'll just nerf something.
Blanket nerfs. Yeah, that's always what they do. At the end of the day, like if we look at balance
Crybabies win.
in the tune in like the theme of what happens with balance of the game, it's not healthy, good overall change. It's what has the most amount of impact against this negative force that we keep hearing about as quick as possible. And it's because they're always pressed for time. I mean, ZeniMax is a studio that's working 2 years into the future constantly. Like, Horns of the Reach has been done for how long? Clockwork City has been done for how long? We just got Morrowind, and instead of balancing Morrowind, they're all busy making new content for the game. And from a business standpoint, it makes sense. But from a player happiness standpoint of retention and like why I want to log in every day, it's a very negative, caustic effect. It's just a similar trend. ESO has moments near the ends of content releases where the population just stops logging on, and then new content comes out, and everyone comes back, and everyone's like, "Woohoo! ESO is good again." And then they allow all the same problems that have always been there to kind of creep back up, and like, oh hey, now you're done with your rosy-eyed glasses, or you finally beat the dungeon 100 times, and that fun effect has worn off, and you are reminded of the reality that there's all of this really shitty stuff in the game still.
That's hilarious. But what's funny is I think I'm actually in the minority when it comes to that, because I'm one of those weird people that I can do the same thing 1,000 times. For me, it's about
Yeah, you are weird. You've got that fucking attention span that's just like what
endless.
child have.
Yeah, well, it's endless. I can just keep going and going and going. Because for me, it's not so much completing the content; it's finding new ways to complete the content and just continuing to iterate within that. So I think for me,
Yeah,
I
but
can't.
that's niche. That's
Yeah, no, that's the thing. I think that's why I can't necessarily connect with what you're saying with these underlying issues that have always been there and that always kind of drive it. I think that's why I think I have a disconnect as far as like what you're saying, but I can understand exactly where you're coming from.
Just ask you a question, Gil, real quick.
What's up?
Have you taken any breaks? Because I think we've
Nope.
played probably about the same amount of time.
I have over 300 days of playtime in ESO. I'm probably probably have the most playtime in ESO, more than like almost anyone, other than people who actually don't work, sort of thing. And no,
So, like,
that wasn't meant to be a loaded comment. That was not meant to be hateful. But I'm just saying, like, I've spent a lot of time in this game. I do the same thing Ryan does, where I can play the game on end. I've completed Sanctum Ophidia more times than I've probably done day-to-day life things like driving. I probably spent more time doing basic things like dungeons than I have done like real life things that people laugh at, sort of thing. So
right. Because I mean, if I didn't quit so much, I'd probably have the same amount. But I just get tired of the same shit. Like, I can't do what Ryan does. I can't go and spend 6 hours in Cradle of Shadows in a 2-man hard mode run. I just beat my fucking head against the wall.
Well, I mean, but
I can do that, but it's the thing that I cannot do is say in a system that the devs don't care to fix. That is what I can't deal with, is being like sitting here from my standpoint where I'm giving really good ideas, I'm breeding conversation, community coming together saying, hey, let's fix this, and then being met with utter silence. That is the issue. Not lack of content, not whatever. It's the inability to fix problems that have been around since like day one or since their day of introduction to the game, and inability to find healthy changes versus let's just make this change.
Well, that's the thing too, though, because I don't know if I can agree that I agree that you have exceptional ideas, and there have been many let's say contributors and collaborators over time that have played ESO that have good ideas. You know, provide things that additions to the game that just make sense to most, if not all people. It's like, oh yeah, why not? I don't think that the lack of response is indicative of maybe them not listening. I think it's perhaps, as you kind of touched on, they're working 2 years in advance, and business wise, since it's not, obviously, for charity, there are choices made. I don't know. I see where you're coming from. I think I have a hard time getting my head around truly how many things are wrong, because I just don't see them the way you do. I think where it comes down to.
I mean, I totally understand, and I sympathize with ZeniMax a lot of times. Like, where other people would bash, I'm like, give them a break. Like, they have this business model. We understand it. Like, this has been the way of the walk since ESO came out, sort of thing. And, like, even through their big changes of lead developers and stuff, like, things have stayed relatively the same. Bugs come in, they stay. New content comes out, new bugs come in. Maybe a few get fixed, more come with them that don't get fixed. Like, and I understand it's because they're a smaller studio than people give them credit for. They don't have billions of dollars to just shovel into fixing stuff. A lot of them are very passionate about their jobs in terms of, like, hey, I'm an artist, I want to create art, I don't want to bug fix. Like, their ability to do things that I am asking for is not completely doable, and I understand that, and I'm not damning them for it, but it's also a system that I cannot stick in with forever. Like, there needs to be some sort of, like, all right, this patch, we are going to say fuck content creation for the next month, and we are really, really going to hammer down on exploits, on bug fixes, on whatever, and then do it at least once every other year. At least once every other year, because if the trend continues with ESO, eventually all it'll be is the revolving door of an MMO that ultimately leads to its death, and that's what I want to avoid as long as possible with this game, because I fucking love it.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of us are at, right? It's like, I think what drives is the passion behind it, and that we love the game, and we don't want it to demise prematurely in any way.
Because as much as we're getting new players coming, also as we've talked about tonight, the level of entry, like, people are gonna start playing, then people are gonna start quitting because they'll be like, I can't do this content, it's too hard now. And, like, they're making it easier now. They've brought the level of entry down, and it's still too difficult for some people. So in the end, it's just gonna die. And what's one of the most biggest questions you get asked all the time when streaming? Is this game still dead? The amount of people that think it's dead.
Well, I don't get that question anymore. The question I get, number one, if you haven't played this game and you're on stream, is this game good? Or should I come back? Like, someone who's quit, is this game worth coming back to? That's what the question is.
I get that a lot. Yeah, I never really get, is this dead? It's like, hey, I took a break X amount of months ago or whatever. How is it now?
Right.
And you just tell them, and they're like, whoa, like, today people are like, I'm re-downloading the game on my PS4, thanks. And I was like, cool, have fun.
Yeah, because I get that, but I understand the revolving door, because there's always turnover. It's managing the turnover so it's not disproportionate, and it's not just like, and 100 people leave and 100 people are in, or 120 people are in, so there's growth, but it's like, okay, who are you again?
Growth, because it's like, you lose the most important aspect of what a community is, and that's longtime people who give back to the community, who make the community into an actual community.
Totally.
So when those people are your ones leaving, that's your big red flag as a game developer to say, okay, we're doing something wrong. We need to either, if we're okay with losing them, we need to add ways to make new ones, so add in more information so players can learn and we can have new people take the mantle, or fix the problems that these people are leaving, like the reasoning for.
I totally get that. I mean, for you guys, what would be the thing that made you go no more ESO? Like, let's get apocalyptic real quick. Let's go dark. Let's get negative. You know what I mean? What is the thing that goes, you know what? I've had a good time. I played this game for a long time and I'm done. Because for me, I don't see, like, I can come up with nightmare scenarios, but I'm curious with you guys, like, what is your thing that you're like, just like, you know what? I'm moving on to my next MMO. I'm moving on to another game more regularly that I want to invest my time in. Like, what is that thing? It could be
I
outside
can't
or
see it.
inside.
I can't see it happening. But if this game became pay to win, as much as I've bought every fucking mount available and costume, right? If it comes pay to win in the sense that you can just buy things constantly at the Crown Store and get ahead, I'd be done.
Got
That'd
it.
be it for me.
Got it. How about you guys, Milk and Gilliam?
Go ahead, Viper.
Okay, thank you, sir. For me to quit playing ESO is, as Gilliam stated, not fixing the bugs that are in the game at all. The new bugs that pop their faces out, and you're like, "Hey, look at you!" Especially the queue system. They really need to fix the queue system. I think that has to be on the top of their list. Like, other than anything else, not being able to do content which you paid for is a deal breaker. They're literally putting a barrier, regardless if they meant to or not. They're putting a barrier on the player and how much they can enjoy because of a faulty queue system in the game. I think they need better look for group tools in there. But if they decided to not fix anything, and if they said, "Hey, for 2,500 crowns, you got your VMA Inferno sharpened staff," like Navi said, I'd be like, "I'm done. This is ridiculous for all of us who put all the time and effort in there." That would just be silly, and to constantly just not balance the game, but just like, let's just destroy all this and everyone's going to be happy for a week, right? Okay, no, oh, all right. Just I feel that they just need better direction. But if they keep going in the way where one side kind of seems to be winning, I hate saying it, we're winning, like, "Hey, we're going to listen to you guys, not anyone else," that would totally just push me away, because it'd be like, "Why am I playing for? Like, the stuff I want to enjoy is not fun anymore." And as soon as I lose the fun, I'm done.
Got it. So it's more so like we were saying, lack of fixes, them not addressing the queues, both battlegrounds and dungeons, and then in addition, similar things to Nafi as far as pay to win. Anything that would basically cheapen your time investment retroactively by then going, yeah, by the way, kind of in like some people were complaining about the Jermothra Sench being available in the crown crates and for crown gems versus being a limited edition thing. Some people are like, I spent X amount, and now it's obviously proportionally cheaper. That with your time basically is what you don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't say all the other stuff because I knew you guys would say it all, but I agree. Nerfs and patches and balancing and stuff.
Got it. All right, so Gilliam, you're up.
Um, my biggest thing isn't necessarily lack of bug fixes. Like, yeah, bug fixes are a big issue. I hate them. Like, I want more of them, sort of thing. I hate that they're not there. But my biggest issue is silence and the lack of seeming interaction with your player base. And I've been monitoring the forums. I read them every single day. Like, I wake up, I check green posts, what's being discussed. And since Morrowind has come out, we've seen a really big drop in meaningful green posting. And that's the scariest part, and the part of
Such
me
as
that
what?
makes me worry the most about, will I keep playing ESO? Like, when Rich Lambert posts and says, "Hey, okay, so this is a really big pressure point for the game right now. I'm going to take a lot of flack for this, but as a lead developer, that's my job." And he talks about it, and he has meaningful discussion. That means more to me than a bug fix. Like, that means more to me than actually fixing the bug itself, is for a developer or a development team to put themselves out, make themselves vulnerable, say, "Hey, we're humans too. We're working on it. Let's talk about it," sort of thing. Instead of just saying, "Yeah, we know it's a bug issue. We're trying to fix it. We'll get back to you in 2 weeks." I don't like that. That doesn't tell me anything. It usually ends up being perceived as a lie because it doesn't get fixed from 2 weeks later. It makes things worse. What's most important is meaningful interaction from a developer to a player base perspective. I don't care if it's only, like, I don't want it to only be with streamers. I don't want it only to be with well-known forum posts. I want it to be with anyone, but like, meaningful discussion. That's all I fucking care about at this point. I just want to see that they care as much as I do.
Got it. A reciprocation of the passion for what obviously you've put time and obviously care into. I get that. I mean, for me, of course, I can't disagree with what you guys are saying, but for me, um, implementation of a gear cap increase that's poorly handled. That is one of my nightmare scenarios. So for those that don't know what I'm talking about that are listening, currently the gear cap is at Champ 160.
Yeah.
And endgame gear at that point no longer scales beyond that. Everything, once you hit Champ 160, it doesn't matter if you're Champ 300, Champ 1000, it's always scaled at Champ 160. And so for longtime players, you've most likely assembled a closet, let's say, of items and sets and combinations, and particularly I would think also for you, Gilliam, in particular, or any streamer or any person that does content production for Elder Scrolls Online, just a massive amount of inventory. I mean, I think my inventory management is renowned for being some of the worst people I've ever seen. That said,
Yeah, but you're the worst because you have like 1,700 fucking HP pots for no goddamn reason.
I'm trying to get to 10,000. That's a different story. Now, what I mean by improper implementation is we know in the lifetime in this game the gear cap's going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can we agree with that? All four of us do any of you guys think otherwise?
It has to.
Yeah,
and if you think that it's not, you're on another planet.
Well, Gilliam, do you agree, or do you think that it's going to stay within the same Champ 160 threshold?
I think in effectiveness it'll stay the same, but how the system works will change. I think if anything, they're going to change how gear interacts with characters, because at the moment there really isn't gear progression from a level 1 to C160 standpoint. The only gear progression that really happens with the new leveling system that they have is getting new endgame gear. So whatever cap is 160, like that's the big difference. It's like I go from Night Mothers to Sunderflame or Night Mothers to Twin Fang Snake. That's the gear progression. There is no I go from level 20 Night Mothers to level 30 Night Mothers, because that doesn't really change anything except for maybe like 1% of my character power. Like ever since they implemented the new battle leveling system, that's kind of changed how gear operates in general.
Got it. Well, going from there, if they implement a change that's maybe a little bit more ham-fisted than what you're describing, as far as how how gear interacts with the game, and let's say they keep the current system and they just change the number, let's say 200, 250, 300. Let's say 300, because since I guess isn't it trials that are scaled to 300 typically? Is that what current is? Didn't Finn confirm that? It's like dungeons were scaled to 160, trials were typically scaled to players that were champ 300 and above.
Veteran, yes.
Veteran, okay. So let's assume it goes.
Say that again. I've zoned out for a second then. Just
Wonderful.
repeat that last.
Naffy's once again falling asleep. What I said is that.
Leave me alone.
So the scaling on vet trials is for players at a equilibrium of like 300 or higher. 300 is the minimum,
right.
Basically, is how it's scaled, and 160 is for the vet dungeons.
Yeah. I thought they'd already implemented that.
No, that's just the basis. So what I'm saying is, let's say they actually make the gear go up to 300 finally. Let's say we go from 160 and they're like, all right, 300.
Oh yeah.
If the conversion, if that transition is, I don't want to put out a bunch of. I guess it's like I don't want to go so down the evil rabbit hole. But like let's say that transition is there's no conversion system whatsoever. You have to make all new gear. So getting some feedback on someone's keyboard. Let's just say that there is no conversion system, number one. So all your gear as of the update now is no longer scaled. You need to get all new gear. I don't think that would happen. That's kind of like door number one. I don't think that would happen, but let's say that happens, right? Boo boo, like what? Like all the farming, all the stuff like that. that would be, it would be killer. It would be very killer for a lot of people that invested time. You go one step further, a conversion system that is somehow tied to the Crown Store. That would kill me. And that I don't think is likely. I don't think that that would happen. But I am very vocal in saying that it would be a very, 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 very bad thing.
See, I didn't. Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I didn't think this game would go really like Crown Store heavy, but then when I saw the fact that they were selling vampire bites and werewolf bites, it kind of scared me.
Gotcha. So as far as like when they started selling the bites versus just allowing you to get them in game.
Yeah, I was like, okay, is this where this game is now going? I mean, as of right now, there is nothing else really. I mean, there's mount upgrades, which we all know I buy, but but yeah, when I saw that, it did concern me a little bit.
I mean, what do you guys think about that idea, though, that of a conversion system? Do you think that would be likely? If there were to, obviously, though, because, when you think about it, the scaling would have to change in the game, period. Because you can't just raise the cap to 300 and not obviously change the scaling with the content, dungeons, trials, etc. It's like otherwise that would make, a trial just nothing. You know what I mean? All of a sudden it's like, oh, and trials are easy. Because obviously it's scaled the way it is based on the gear stopping at 160 and then people having, that gap fill to obviously fill out their characters and hit certain thresholds, whatever role they play. So, I mean, what do you guys think? Is that scenario something that's game breaking for you? A conversion system that's tied to the Crown Store?
Without having it built in internally, yes. Like if they offered it in the Crown Store but had just another way to do it in game that was not monetary based at all, I'd be very upset, and I would definitely go on the forums and speak against it, but I would not quit over it.
Got it. Would be upset but not quit. Milk Viper, how about you?
If there was, like Gilliam said, if there's two options, if there's two roads for a singular destination, I mean, if you go with the Crown Store, it's whoever has the most money. For me, I would do it with in-game if it was an option. But if it was specifically only Crown Store, I would stop because that's essentially pay to win.
Yeah, if Crown Store only. Second, we get into pay to win stuff that really heavily impacts like your actual efficiency and character power, rather than just, oh hey, I saved an hour sort of thing. Like that gets into really scary territory. Like time saving can be pay to win in some regards, depending on how grindy the game is. Take BDO for example. It's pay to win because it saves you so much time that you could never get anyways, but you can still get all the stuff in game. So if ESO did that too, I would be just as pissed and probably end up quitting.
Gotcha.
Yep, same. Because that's right up the pay to win thing I was saying.
Gotcha.
So if there's an option to grind, I'm down for it. If there's an option to probably pay your way there, I'll probably go for that. But only one way.
Well, then I think the final thing I want to touch on is like going forward with the Elder Scrolls Online. We obviously have announcements for Horns of the Reach in Clockwork City. Personally, I'm very excited.
That 12-second trailer we got to see at BE3?
So I'm very excited, obviously, for Horns of the Reach, and it was not even 12 seconds; it was like 3 seconds.
Okay, the whole ESO section was just 12 seconds.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. I'm not gonna lie, people didn't even know dungeons were announced. They're like, Horns of the Reach, that looks like a public delve. But anyway, I'm excited. I'm very excited for obviously new dungeon content because obviously 4-man's kind of my shtick. So, Q3 when they announced kind of the structure of content based, chapter, dungeon based, and then more content at the end of the year makes me happy because I'm like, Q3 is Tech and Junk time. Like, let's go. This is gonna be, right up my alley. I'm very excited about it. Clockwork City. I'm very excited to go to Clockwork City. I'm not gonna lie. It's like that's one of the few like areas where I'm like, yes, I want to go there. I want to see all the stuff. Obviously, they're even adding some form of a unique trial that's somewhat smaller, but still 12-man content. Going to be kind of interesting to see that. I mean, looking forward in the game, I'm very optimistic of where it has to go, and I'm very excited to obviously be part of the conversation as far as playing the game constantly, having a vibrant community to be a part of, to engage with and connect with in this game. I see a lot of positive things for it. But for you guys, what are you looking forward to with it? What are you excited about, perhaps, as we finish out this second half of the year?
I guess I'll go first. I'm excited with you about the content that's coming out. New content's fun. Conquer it, have fun, show people how to do it, have a good time. That's something that I'm very looking forward to. And again, like I found out about those dungeons by like people saying, "Hey, did you hear about this?" and having to search for it because apparently it was really, really, very, very poorly like put out there. And I was like, "Huh, that's funny." Like, oh, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
But I am looking forward to that. Like, I mean, you and I kind of have the same thing, but you got your team, so you guys are gonna be like, yeah, we're gonna smash it, and I'm gonna be like, anybody want to hang out?
That's
I
not
got
true at all.
donuts.
I got.
Hot dogs.
Mel, I'm always down to hang out, man.
But
Oh, that's funny.
I like, and content is good when it's fleshed out, when it's fun, it's great. But
Mhm.
I just want them to have that balance, like that Gillian was talking about. Like, hey guys, we're gonna work on buttoning up the game. It's kind of like a car. We're gonna give her a tune-up, and then we're gonna keep going at it. And if they can actually implement that and push it forward, this game can actually grow bigger. It can get healthier. It's a great game at its core. It's a great game, and it's just has awkward barriers of entry for new players because of how much stuff they throw at you. I do like how they remove the ability to see all the skills automatically. You don't see them until you use them. You don't see them until they're unlocked for you. You're like, oh, what's this new thing? That's cool. But I think it needs a more. But I am excited the way it's going. It seems like ZeniMax is, putting everything they got into it, and that makes me happy in the long run.
Gotcha. All right, so Naf and Gilliam, same question.
I'm the same as you. Can't wait to see it unfold. I can't wait until we can finally go to every section of Tamriel. Like right now, there's still parts of it that you try and work out how big it'd be on the map, and I just can't wait till that's all filled in and every section of that map we can click and go to and explore.
Gotcha.
Like,
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun.
and keep the fucking dungeons coming, man. I like dungeons.
I can't. Yes, I'll co-sign very hard with that. At the top of the mountain, screaming out
And
loud.
more mechanics, please. Just more mechanics. Rather than insane health pools of bosses, more mechanics.
Yeah, you say this to the people that we were doing runes
Yeah,
and
because I've got
those
friends
mechanics
that
were
play
fine.
with.
God damn, yeah, those mechanics were plenty. But actually, yeah, I'm excited for new challenging dungeons. I think it's going to actually be pretty awesome to see because obviously each DLC dungeon thing is obviously amped up the difficulty one to the next, and I'm excited to see what's coming after Cradle of Shadows and Ruins of Mesatoon. But yeah, Gilliam, I mean, same thing. Going forward, what are you excited about? What are you looking forward to as we go to the second half of 2017 with the Elder Scrolls Online?
I mean, it's already been said. More content is always good. I'm looking forward to it being meaningful content. Like, if we could not have a repeat of Ruins and Cradle, where the dungeons are really barred from because they're so difficult for so many people, but at the same time having awful drops aside from like one or two pieces of gear. Like, if we could avoid that as much as possible. I love new gear because I love experimenting, but at the same time, I hate that ESO. Like, every day I go to sets on websites and like, okay, I want a new idea. What can I push out that maybe I've been like ignoring or not giving proper credit? And I just look through hundreds of pure garbage sets. No more.
You mean you don't like the Leviathan fire staffs? You don't like them?
Yeah, just I want meaningful content that has me like fiending to be like, all right, I can't wait to fucking get that new item set, and I'm gonna grind for the next 2 weeks if I need to get it, and then to be able to have that transition into newer, more difficult content where it's like, hey, you got that new gear, now you can take on the real big challenge sort of thing. Like, that's what I love.
All right,
It's
well,
funny you should
I
say
can get into that.
I've actually not felt like what Gilliam's just said. I've not felt like that since the actual initial announce of monster sets. When I was like, cool, I can actually wear that fucker's head on my head. I've not felt that way over any specific gear.
Huh.
I mean, I'll still rock Julianos for fuck's sake, because is the old
Right.
better? really?
Right. I mean, here's the thing too, and this will be the final thing. Perhaps it's going to be something Bank Bag was a rousing success, but a 2-man arena, yay or nay? Are you on board
Yes.
for it? 2-man arena.
I
You on
wanted
board?
it with Maelstrom.
Okay. Yep. And which
What do you
arguably
mean
that's
2-man arena? Do you mean like PvP arena or like
no
Maelstrom
2-man
with like a friend?
Maelstrom with a friend.
Oh, definitely, because then like I can see how good you really are.
Oh, you motherfucker.
That too. Yeah. Being able to put people to the test. All right, you talk a big game, let's see it translate. And then
Right.
also being
To
able
be
to be like, hey, I can't do Maelstrom alone. All right, well, I'm pretty fucking good. Let's go.
Yeah, you know
I'll
what
get
I
I've
mean?
seen you
there.
do it. You did it with a fucking broom and bucket, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, so if I could help people at the same time, that's all the
Mhm.
better.
Yeah, see, and that's my feeling too. I'm like,
I didn't beat it. I didn't beat it until Ryan helped me. But hey,
hey, that was part of the joy though, and that's kind of the thing up with a lot of content creators for hard content. It's like you're trying. What it is, it's like there's an element for some people where they're like, yeah, I just want to show that I'm fucking amazing. I am the best. I am the best of the best, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's another part of it that I think anybody connects to with it, which is I'm trying to make this accessible. I want you to have fun too. I want you to do this and experience the fun that I'm having right now. Let me show you how. Let me break this down. Let me fail in as many ways as possible and show you what not to do, and then show you that with patience, with cunning, and with a little bit of time, obviously, you can do it too. At least that's how I think of it, especially when it comes down to stupid runs that we obviously a lot of us have tried. But yeah, 2-man arena. We have a 1-man arena with the Maelstrom arena. We have a 4-man arena with VetDSA, and obviously VetDSA has not been touched in a very long time. We consistently have new 12-man trials that come out that are amazing and are cool. They're awesome skins, mechanics, group like team building. It's the raid of ESO in a way, and that's awesome. But for a lot of people, the 12 people moderately aware of what's going on, getting it together is somewhat challenging, particularly on console, more so than PC, because obviously there are more established bodies that exist there that do runs. So the idea again of something, and I would settle for another 4-man, but really something unique and 2-man, I think would be so cool, such a cool addition to the game, and yeah, maybe something I start hashtagging
you'll
more.
be you'll be a long time before adding that to follow a Friday.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, so Martyr, hey, you wanna do that with somebody? I'll host you. Yeah, that would be it.
That's a really good idea. That would open so many doors for so many people,
Mm-hmm.
and it would breathe new life. It would be great. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, and it would also help give that bridge between the person who's solo and like has friends but not enough to go do dungeons consistently because maybe they're not like
Mm-hmm.
maybe that group of friends isn't strong enough to really tackle some of the harder stuff, so they can't do
Mm-hmm.
that. But if you add in the two-person content, then it's like, oh hey, this guy is always solo but he wants to do group stuff but can't find 3 other great people. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well now we have this option to do stuff together and kind of be like, hey, how much fun are you having? Just imagine what it would be like with 2 more people. Like all of the team
Right.
building we can do, the synergy, the different gear sets we can try together. Like that sort of the more of that the better because that's
Mm-hmm.
what builds community is being able to link player A to player B and then showing, hey, this is how fucking cool this is. Just imagine how much better it could be with even more people.
Exactly, and I couldn't agree more. Because again, what's interesting about having each of you on for this talk is that you all have pretty significantly different backgrounds in how you started the game, how you approach the game, how you have approached the game in the past, and then currently going forward. And yet, what connects all of us is what was just said, in that it's about that community building and inclusion and fun and allowing people to find that fun in the way that suits them best and not letting even the game itself stand in the way of that. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's having that passion to play with other people.
Yeah, exactly right, or at least that incentive. And I think we're gonna end it there with that. I gotta say a big thank you again to Gilliam the Rogue, Milk Viper, and Sergeant Naffy. Gilliam the Rogue, check him out on YouTube, check him out on Twitter, check him out at delciusgaming.com with a lot of incredible builds that he continues to put out. He's the min-maxing master. Definitely follow him on Twitter. Check out Milk Viper, twitch.tv/Milk Viper. He is the Milky Goodness, the Dark Moons, the man, the myth, the legend. Definitely check him out on Twitch. It's an absolute pleasure to watch and also part of the Junk Network. And finally, pray that Sergeant Naffy, the Salty Wonder, the Scottish Scotsman, joins us back again in some form of ESO. He goes, he comes, he wins. But again, an absolute pleasure having all of you here. Again, this has been the Tech and Junk channel with Junk Talk. Cheers, and thank you for watching.